Welcome back to Tipping Point. All right, the GOP has been driving me crazy lately with their obnoxious infighting. Not going to help us win elections, folks. But a new feud is brewing on the other side between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. As Bernie rises in the polls and the Iowa caucuses creep closer, Hillary is escalating her attacks. From guns to healthcare to Wall Street, they even disagree on their support for President Obama. Take a look.
My proposal: provide health care to all people, get private insurance out of health insurance, lower the cost of health care for middle-class families by $5,000. That's the vision we need to take.
We have the Affordable Care Act. That is one of the greatest accomplishments of President Obama, of the Democratic Party, and of our country. But he's criticized President Obama for taking donations from Wall Street. Senator Sanders called him weak, disappointing. He even in 2011 publicly sought someone to run in a primary against President Obama.
If there's anything worse than a Democrat, it's an angry Democrat, and anything worse than that is an angry Democrat who feels threatened. Now I'd like to welcome back to the show political radio host and conservative commentator Andrea Kaye. Andrea, great to have you here.
Oh, thanks for having me back, Liz. Did you see that look on Bernie's face just now that he gave Hillary? That was quite the stank face.
It was. He did not expect that attack, especially because he's been acting so gentlemanly.
I know.
Hillary is acting scared, though. Is she feeling the burn from Bernie going into Iowa on Monday?
Oh, she's burning. And if you saw, speaking of ugly looks, if you saw her face at that town hall that she did, she is hot. She is warm. She is burned up with anger at what is going on. Because, you know, Liz, she thought this was going to be, a coronation. And then it's like, oh, wait a second. Is this 2008 all over again for me? She's thinking that was supposed to be a coronation. It's like Bernie Sanders is like some bad 60s flashback for her because she's seeing it slip away again. It's terrible. Right.
Like you said, in that town hall, the kid in the audience asked her about her dishonesty. He said a lot of people in our generation, the millennial generation, don't know if she's dishonest or not, don't know if we trust him. Her face froze like her inner ice was coming out. It was a sight to be seen.
It was Cruella de Vil, man. If she could have Vince Fostered that kid, she would have. Bernie is tapping into, he's kind of like the liberal version of Trump in a sense, that he's really tapping into the anger that's going on out there in America as to what's going on in D.C. with both parties. It's the year of the outsider. And it's like the only anger she's tapping into is like that kid, the people that are angry over her lies, over Benghazi, over the email scandal in the Clinton Foundation. So,
right, she's angry that she's not already president.
Right.
She has been talking a lot about her experience as compared to Bernie. She's been a little harsher in her attacks to Bernie than Bernie has been in his attacks to her. He said he wants to take the high road, and he has for the most part, but she's been comparing her experience as Secretary of State to his congressional career. And I do understand the comparison in the sense that he hasn't accomplished anything since he's been in Congress, but I'm not sure that her experience as Secretary of State is anything to brag about.
No, I mean, if you consider bad experience, okay, yeah, she's like the queen of the mountain in terms of bad experience, but seeing those two try to duke it out over who's the most qualified, it's like in a valley of blind men, a one-eyed man can be king, right? I mean, come on, neither one of them has the qualifications. In fact, what she's done and her criminal behavior and what's going on with the email scandal and the SAP information that was on her server, she should not only be disqualified and not running for president, Liz, she should have already been doing a perp walk.
Right. She should certainly be indicted for that. Hopefully the FBI gets a move on. I think she's scared because of those emails that she once delayed a whole month before their release when it was only 3 days that the storm supposedly delayed her staff. That's just so sketchy to me.
Right.
But besides the personal attacks that they've been making on each other, they have been comparing policies. And while the essence of their policies to me seem the same, some of the methods that they're going about implementing them are a little different. And one of the main things is health care. As you know, Hillary has said that she doesn't want to repeal Obamacare, that she doesn't think that there's anything major wrong with Obamacare, that the problems with it are just glitches, and she wants to build on that. And Bernie's hacked her a little bit for that. He said he doesn't want to do away with it, but he wants to institute a Medicare for All program. What do you think of that?
Well, I think that, first of all, anybody who's got a brain knows that Obamacare is not working. Even the Democrats understand that everybody's costs have gone up and have doubled. Nobody's access to health care has increased. In fact, people have lost their health care. The only people that ended up enrolled under Obamacare were people that actually had insurance before and were forced into the exchanges. So I really think, though, what's going on to me is that I really think when Hillary can't answer the question as to what the difference is between a Democrat and a socialist, I think they're really two sides of the same coin. And what it's really kind of is a coded conversation in terms of how really best is the Democrat Party going to get their socialist agenda over on the people. And I think she's trying to be a little bit more pragmatic and say, look, let's build upon this foundation. We know, I actually think that it was a planned collapse of the Obamacare that will usher in, make it so bad, make it so painful for people that people will beg for a complete single-payer policy. I think that's her strategy ultimately versus him being, I'm just going to try to blow everything up, crazy uncle kind of stuff.
Right, and I've said before, I disagree fundamentally on basically everything that I've ever heard from Bernie, but he doesn't seem dishonest. Like, I believe he genuinely thinks that Medicare for all is the best solution. He wants to help people. He's just so misguided, misinformed, and ignorant about what history's shown us that programs like that do, that he continues to push that. But you mentioned Hillary not being able to differentiate the definition between a socialist and a Democrat. Right. And I find this to be funny because while she can't sit there and say, this is what I stand for as a Democrat, this is what he stands for as a socialist, because it's essentially the same, at the same time, she accuses him of being a socialist. That's one of the attacks she's using in Iowa in order to discredit him in front of voters.
Yeah, and what I find interesting is, and what I found is, you know, we think of Iowa as Republicans, we think of Iowa as being a bastion of conservatism. There's actually a lot of socialists in Iowa, so I'm not really sure that that's a good strategy for her, unless she actually figures out a way in which she can dishonestly discredit socialism because she actually believes in it. You know, and she really, a lot of people are saying, what's all this big fuss about Iowa? Because it never ends up mattering. It didn't Santorum win in 2012. You know, it's not necessarily that pivotal, but it is for Hillary. Because if you look back on 2008 and what happened in 2008, when she thought she was going to be coronated, here comes this little upstart Barack Obama. She ended up having to pour on the waterworks in New Hampshire, and it didn't work for her there. So in some ways, while Iowa isn't that big of a deal for other people, it really is for her. And she can really see it slipping away. And I read today that it's almost like door-to-door combat in Iraq, them going neighborhood to neighborhood, you know, against each other, trying to get some broad support going on. And I don't know, who do you think is going to end up winning between those two?
Overall or in Iowa?
In Iowa.
Oh, in Iowa, I think Bernie might win. I don't know. I hesitate to make predictions like that because you can never tell. Human nature's a little iffy, but it wouldn't surprise me to see Bernie winning more than we anticipate. I do want to pinpoint one thing that you said before. You talked about there being a lot of socialists in Iowa. I read a study the other day that said 59% of liberals would be okay with voting for a socialist. My question to you is, where are these people getting their ideas of what a socialist is? Are they listening to Bernie and that's what they think is real socialism? Or do they not have any idea what happens in countries like Cuba or the Soviet Union when real socialism takes over and destroys society?
Well, I think the left has done a really good job. They infiltrated. They knew, going back many years, Liz, that you control the message and you control minds. And that's why they actively infiltrated our education systems and our media, the entertainment industry, every different way that they could send messages in a way to control through indoctrination of people. We don't have history anymore in our schools. Children are not being raised to understand what is Marxism, what is socialism, what does it mean, how has it failed everywhere in the world that it has been tried. On top of that, we do have a society that's got the attention span that's gnat-like. So people are actually voting off of platitudes that can fit on a bumper sticker, and people aren't researching for themselves. And we actually, even more basic, Liz, we've got an America that doesn't understand the most basic lesson of economics, that there's no such thing as government money. There's no such thing as a free lunch. We don't even, you can buy into socialism if you don't understand.
Right, people don't understand that eventually in socialism you run out of spending other people's money. And what happens then is people lose their jobs, they lose their livelihoods, the government takes over, and it's a mess. And we've seen it time and time again around the world. People still don't understand.
No.